Second. Wonderful stuff. Thank you. I was just talking until somebody noticed. Perfect. Thank you very much indeed for those who've joined exactly on time, and for those that are coming in, you're very, very welcome. Please find somewhere comfortable for the next hour and a half or so. It feels like we've covered a huge amount of ground, doesn't it, so far today? And it has been so stimulating. I've genuinely enjoyed every one of the discussions and felt like I've learned a huge amount. And you'll be thrilled to know that the fabulous lineup continues. We've still got to hear from Heineken, Evalua, the Kraft Heinz Company and Siemens, amongst others. We've also got a really exciting session to close out today, which really for me is the highlight, and I can't wait to hear from them. My colleagues Emily Maitlis, who is the co-host of The News Agents and of course former lead anchor of Newsnight, not to mention an interview with a royal, and also Alistair Campbell, who co-hosts The Rest is Politics. He's an author. He was a former Downing Street communications and strategy advisor, amongst many other talents that he has. They're going to be in conversation here towards the end of the day, hoping to shed some light for you all on the power of politics and geography and how that impacts global supply chains. So that is to come. But before that, we've got another couple of sessions for you. This next one, very interesting in itself. We're going to look now, look forward with Daniel Johansson, Global Head of Procurement Strategy and Excellence at Australian multinational specialty biotechnology company CSL, and Prerna Dhawan, Chief Solutions Officer at the Smart Cube. Daniel and Prerna are going to be discussing how procurement took a leading role in driving value from M&As and how embracing agility was at the heart of success. We're going to be joined now by Lorenza Schiaffino, Head of Content Research for Events at Procurement Leaders, to lead us through that discussion. So please give them all a very warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Natasha, for the introduction, and a very warm welcome to our panelists. So please do take a seat. So I hope that you all enjoyed the mix and match of different sessions within the different breakout rooms, and delighted that we're all back together in plenary now, because we are going to, I think, circle back to some extent to some of the key topics that we heard about this morning. You know, we spoke a lot about agility, we spoke a lot about value, but what I'm particularly delighted about is that we are going to take a very specific lens, and it's the value that's been generated by an M&A process. And with that in mind, I am going to ask my panelists to tell us a little bit more about themselves. So Prerna, if I can start with you, please.
Yeah, I'm the Chief Solutions Officer at the Smart Cube, where I look at our solutions and embedded products. I also manage our partner relationships, and over the last 16 years, I've been working with many global businesses, helping them embed intelligence and analytics across the procurement function. Very delighted to be here today.
Wonderful, thank you. Daniel, over to you.
So I'm global head of strategy and excellence at CSL, new role. I have about 20 years in procurement, been stuck in pharma for most of those 20 years, and before my current role, I was head of global procurement at Vifor Pharma.
Great. Now, before we double-click on the story of this particular M&A, what I'd like to do is actually call up some stats, if I may. We should have a slide. Wonderful. This is a few quotes from a report that we did, or some insights on M&A from a procurement leader's perspective. And what you can see on the slides are really some learnings. I'm going to leave you to read those, but I want to highlight the kind of 3 key points, because we are going to be deep diving into these. Know the organization, know the people, allocate dedicated resources. So the magic sauce to really make it all happen. And on that, I'd like Daniel to tell us a little bit more about his journey.
So over the course of the years, I've been through a lot of different mergers, acquisitions. I've been on both sides. I've been a consultant as well. The latest one was last year in August when we were taken over as V4 Pharma by CSL out of Australia. And a whole new organization. We were about 10 people in V4 procurement. We were nominated last year, very, very happy about that, for a World Procurement Award. Didn't win, though. But we were then being taken over by an organization of more than 100 people. So there was a bit of nervousness, of course, in that. This acquisition, which hit me a little bit different, actually, because there was to the points on the screen as well, there was an openness from our acquirer in actually learning about what we have. They were 10 times as big, or are 10 times as big as the V4 organization. But they really, really took the time learning about what we were doing. My boss, Trevor Ray, who was supposed to be here on stage with us, but unfortunately he couldn't make it, was very keen to communicate as well, to say big is not necessarily best. It was a little bit like a David and Goliath situation that we saw, but he was very keen to understand what we had as a small organization, an agile organization, what we had developed. And it was also communicating that across the entire procurement organization, but also externally. And I think that was what was really, really different to this. In my previous situations, it's been big always means better. And as a small organization, you then need to sort of be absorbed by the big organization.
Great. And I'd like to now focus on the role, really. We talked about some of the ingredients, and Daniel, you alluded to the openness, the collaboration, and really the kind of the embracing, I guess, of the process. And within kind of all of that, there is a point about the visibility, the kind of the data. So I'd like, Prerna, if you can reflect on this journey that you have been going on, together with Daniel, and also perhaps views from previous experiences as well.
Yeah, so I think including with CSL V4, but also with other clients, I think data is playing a very fundamental role. We've been hearing that all day today, actually, and it's about the visibility. So when you're getting into a M&A situation, it's a big part of that is synergies, right? And how do you get visibility of those synergies, not just after the deal has been announced, but in many cases it should be the visibility you have upfront, because that plays a part in the valuation that's being there, right? That's being put out there. And what we've been looking at is, synergies, not just in terms of what's the scale when it comes to combining the volume of the businesses, contracts and the harmonization. And like Daniel said, it was really a very open approach to saying who has better contracts or better rates or MSAs, not just the bigger or the smaller organization in this case, and generally as well. But I think beyond those traditional levers, it's also about what are you actually buying, rather than what supplier you're buying from or what price you're paying. There's a lot of elements of demand management, right? What policies you have in place, and that's where the data and visibility play a big role, so that your synergies are not just about, can I squeeze suppliers in either company to get us better rates, but also, can I change the way my business is buying, using the M&A as an opportunity to reimagine procurement, if you may.
And with that in mind, Daniel, if I can kind of flip back over to you, and we kind of spoke about procurement as a value creator, and the value creator, across the different functions within the business. And I guess what we want to dispel is the myth that it's an us and them, as in procurement and the business, but we're all in the business and we should operate as such. I guess a question in two parts. What was difficult about that? And what helped you, in actually achieving the success that you did achieve?
Yeah, so actually already before the deal went through, with of course all the rules of not sharing information, we were actually asked as procurement to be part of the value creation project. So actually coming up with what could we actually potentially do. I could only see my data and my numbers, and only sort of wish that I knew all the other data. But together with the Smart Cube and their team, we were able then to really build a case that we were then presenting to the V4 organization, and then that was brought up into integration. And once the deal was closed, it was just a natural thing that the integration, what we call value capture project, that was co-led between business and procurement. And the target that was then communicated to the market, we actually were assigned, well, I can't say how much, but a big chunk of that to be delivered as procurement savings or procurement value. And again, we went through the data, but we didn't just go with data, but we also went further and made sure, okay, so what does the data mean? What does that give us? With great help from and then of course the agility also of having an external partner helping us with that data. So in the end, we've actually tripled what we were given as a target. A lot of it thanks to just being able to do it quickly with external partners.
And Prerna, from your lens, we've been, I think, talking about procurement analytics for 10 years or thereabout, and and the results and the outcomes are not necessarily kind of always there. But from your view across a multitude of clients that you work with, what is the DNA of the organizations that get the most out of the analytics and the data? How to do that?
Yeah, I would say it's largely just one thing. It's the mindset. It's the mindset to change. It's the mindset to adopt and embrace new ways of working, to become more data-driven, become more insight-led. So ultimately, it's about the mindset that we are seeing with our customers. And often we have customers who, after a year, there's some change, and they're like, I'm not sure the quality of data is great. And I think that's where a lot of companies get stuck with. Right? You have to take that step, and of course, look at your data as a foundation. But if you don't take that first step and you don't invest in your data strategy, your data foundation, you'll never achieve the end results. So it is about taking that leap, and from there making it a priority, making it a change in the way you do things, I would say.
And we were chatting backstage, we were talking about, again, it was a kind of an us and them conversation, right? And I think the point that we were making was that it's working together. And I think, you put it really nicely, that you see yourself as an extension of the business. I'd like both of you, your views on that. Prerna, I'd like to start with you. Is how do you achieve that?
Yeah, so I think, at the Smart Cube, we've been going for 20 years, and primarily when we talk to customers, new or existing, we really operate as an extension of their teams. And it's about saying that, how is your operating model agile? Because you don't necessarily, as procurement, have always the budget or the time to, hire, retain people. And I think we are seeing that the kind of skills you need in procurement are much more varied than what they were 10 years ago. Broadly, the agendas are still the same. Yes, of course, it's about ESG, it's about value creation, etc. But now you have a lot of data that you have to play with. So do you need data scientists in your own team? Do you build a center of excellence? Or do you actually take a hybrid approach that you build a small internal team that looks at analytics or insights or enablement, but you use partners like us to actually do that at scale? And that's what we've been doing, right, as an extension of the team. Like, we work with many big pharma companies where we are helping them with analytics and analytics at scale. I think we've moved beyond the point where it's up to anybody to prove to the business that data is value. We will we'll drive impact from more analytics and more technology. I think we all accept that. It's about how do you do that at scale, and how do you get your people to embrace that and make that a part of their decision making. Yeah.
We'll come back to the kind of the impact part, but what I wanted to ask you, Daniel, is on the day-to-day, and you said it, Prerna, it's insight at scale is difficult, and a merger and acquisition process in itself is difficult, is laborious, is time-consuming, all of these things. So what was the most helpful, on a kind of day-to-day in terms of the support that you got?
So I think one of the first thing, and everyone knows this, data is key. So for us, it was key to get a combined spend cube in place as quickly as possible. It took 5 days. We had one already in place, a very pragmatic one, but again, through partnerships, we were able to actually do something that hasn't been there before, and create that in 5 days, and that became our platform. So that was the first success that we actually did together and delivered. The second one for me was around sort of working together, but it was then more about the cultural thing, the cultural fit, and that was one of the reasons why we were starting to look at different solutions outside. There was the resources; they're not abundant in any companies, and we were looking at a partner outside. And the cultural fit is important, as well as the leadership, telling and explaining why we're doing this to your team, and ensuring communicating. This is we, not us and them. I think that was our main success, which we're now taking global.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of, I think there's an important point here. It's about the speed, right? I think a lot of times organizations get challenged by the high time to insight. I think if you're chasing perfection and that absolutely accurate number on everything, you're losing out on a lot of opportunity, that, the time value factor. And we heard earlier today, I think there was an example from Jagger, which they were saying that there was a company that, it took them 2 months to look at steel prices, and in that time the prices had gone up by 50%. They had lost a lot of competitive advantage. So I think, at least in my view, it's about, how do you reduce that time to insight for your teams, and then how do you also give them access to that data, intelligence, visibility at the point of decision making. Right? You can have very nice tools and amazing platforms, but if it's not something that's easy for me as a procurement professional to use, if it doesn't make my life easier, if it's another platform I have to log into, it's not part of my day, then it is, I'm not going to adopt that. I think that's what we see in a lot of our clients, and where we see success versus not in terms of adoption of both technology and intelligence analytics, I would say.
And that kind of notion of the right information at the right time kind of brings me back to something that, Daniel, you alluded to in one of our previous conversations, and it really is stuck with me, because I was thinking of the specific environment and, the particular type of business that a vibrant biotech needs to be. And you emphasize that it is crucial that the procurement team members are really knowledgeable about the business, and this obviously entails a complex business where the pipeline, the kind of the new is really the kind of the lifeblood. So can you tell us about sort of how the data, how the insight really does support that internal credibility?
Yeah, so data is again the platform, but what's really, really important, I think Mark from Mars this morning, and Amanda as well alluded to it as well, there's a completely different expectation on procurement now, and has been for years, but it's just becoming more and more that it's not enough for us just to present data and say, oh, we can save 1 million here or 20% there. They want more. They really want more from us, and we need to change. Data is still important and is still driving decisions, has to do that, but our people, we need to have the teams that are able to be business enablers or purpose-led change agents, as we heard this morning. We need to be able to have those teams and drive that, because business is expecting it. We can then come with the insights that data will give us, and we can help them to actually develop their strategies. And in a pharma company, we are actually, I would say, the only department who has the full perspective from sort of discovery of a new molecule to sunset of a product in the market. We are there to support in all steps across that process. And we need to have the right people. And I usually say that it's not enough that my team speaks procurement. They need also to speak business. So if they are working with R&D, they need to understand what does a protocol in clinical trials mean and how do we develop that. They need to know that so that they can actually support. And I think that's the secret sauce that I've seen, at least.
And going forward, if I can kind of probe a little bit more on that, given the point in the journey that you're at now, how do you see kind of your team, develop in order to meet always increasing demands in terms of that, let's call it additional value that they can bring to the organization?
So it's all about change and change management, and we are putting a lot of effort now in training. We're building a new procurement academy, where we are actually only having about 20%, 30%, I believe, of procurement-specific trainings, and the rest will actually be business trainings. So finance acumen, you need to know how to read all those numbers and talk about that. You need to understand R&D if you're in that area. So we're doing much more bespoke trainings for the team. And it's also about having the right people. Some people, they don't want to change, and the change is inevitable.
Absolutely. And with that kind of in mind, then let's go back to the impact, because this is where it all kind of then goes back to the tangible impact that you can make on the business. Prerna, you touched upon it earlier on, and I'd like to take your views as sort of, from the work that you do across verticals, across different geographies. Tell us more about impact and where you see the big ask kind of come from.
I guess if I look at the impact that procurement's making, and again, it's a theme that we've not just heard this morning, we've heard it in previous events, and I think the focus is changing to some extent, but ultimately, yes, it's still, I wouldn't say it is still very much about cost savings or avoidance. I think those are table stakes. Procurement is expected to deliver on that. Procurement is also expected to ensure quality and compliance, but is the impact in terms of sustainability and the change that you have on your business, but also society at large. It's about the impact procurement is having in terms of risk management, and I think COVID was a great example. We had a lot of clients, obviously they were, and I think we had, there was one interesting story we had. It was with the CPG business, where for all of our other clients were coming to us and saying, there's a lot of supply disruption, there are a lot of these, events that are happening, and Nandini talked about polycrisis, and what's the risk for my business, what's the, exposure. We had all our clients coming to us and wanting more intelligence and visibility and scenario planning around it, but there was this one client who came and said, actually, there's a lot of volatility in commodity markets. Right? And this is an opportunity for me to look at all our existing contracts and see where is the opportunity for procurement to actually go and renegotiate and use this as an opportunity, not look at the risk, but at the opportunity to bring more savings than we had originally planned for. So I think it is about the impact and being more proactive in that sense. And of course, taking a more wider view. I think from an M&A standpoint, my view is that when the two organizations combine, they'll also have a different way to measure impact, right? What is your definition of impact? When you look at themes like co-creation, supplier partnering, supplier-enabled innovation, how do you measure impact of those aspects? Because I think we've gotten to a point where everybody kind of has nailed down, how do I measure my savings, market-led impact, changes or cost avoidance? I think that we've mostly gotten to a good point, but how do you measure the impact of co-creation with your partners? How do you measure the impact of partnerships and things like that? I think that's still something we're yet to, I guess, figure out fully.
Many levers to kind of pull to get to that impact, and I think you summarized very nicely the idea that we all work within an ecosystem, so it's that collaborative piece. So Daniel, how does that that journey that has kind of begun, got to a really nice point, and now moves forward? What does impact look like?
So the main impact that we've shown is actually transparency, and actually sharing analytics, of course, sharing that piece of information, but it's really also beyond that, actually, market analytics, the different contractual databases that we have, making sure that we actually extract the necessary data, create the decision-making platform, and actually then have a seat at the table working with the stakeholders, creating that launch plan, because we know we have the data, we can then support them in forecasting, etc., and be a business partner in that sense. And that's the main thing. I think what has happened for us through the merger or acquisition is that our seat at the table is even more firm now than it was before, much thanks to the great collaboration that we had with business and stakeholders in the value capture project, because suddenly it was very clear what the value of procurement actually is.
Absolutely. Now, I'm conscious that the time goes away kind of quickly when we're up here. And as we kind of bring the conversation almost to a close, I am really keen to get any questions, if you have any. So I'm going to ask my colleagues at the back. Wonderful. So Have either of you experience in bringing two teams together in an agile fashion? Seems like a big opportunity in these projects that usually move rather slowly. Who wants to take this first?
Well, for us it was, for us to collaborate, it took a week. And then the walls were down, much to I would say, the great leadership of my boss, Trevor. He's not here, but I can still say that. I won't get any brownie points, but it is down to that, actually. Then, of course, having a full integration takes longer because you are actually stuck with other enabling functions that need to support you. You need to have the technical integration. You need to have HR really supporting you on all the contracts and everything. But from an organizational perspective, it was very quick. And I think it comes down to mindset.
Indeed. Here's another great one. And Prerna, I'd love you to take this one. So outsourcing traditionally isn't very agile, but big reason for this is the innate unagile ops model of procurement. So top tips to get the internal team prepped for this.
Yeah, I think, I guess we've mentioned this multiple times, but it is the mindset, and it's about being very clear about the vision and the objectives and linking the objectives for procurement to the business. Because of course, and we've talked about this, procurement's not operating in an isolation or in a silo. Procurement's there to drive value for the entire business, and probably the function that has the opportunity to do that not just within, but with the supplier network. So I think it's about, when you're saying prepping the internal teams, it's really about, being very clear with the vision, being very clear about what you expect of your team versus what you would bring to them in terms of technology, in terms of the tools, in terms of the support and the enablers that they will have to do their jobs better. And I think we heard this earlier today, that a lot of times the challenge becomes that you, for example, have a category manager, and then there's a theme about ESG, and you're like, okay, now Mr. Category Manager, you need to consider that. And next time, now Mr. Category Manager, start looking at SRM, start looking at supplier-enabled innovation. But it's really about, in that operating model, thinking about things that truly need to be done as a specialist capability, and being very clear about what you expect of your current team and the roles they're expected to play.
Yep.
Just a short comment on that. It comes down to leadership. I mean, you as a leader, you need to convince your team it's a good idea. It's in their interest to play this game. That's the only thing, as I see it, internally.
And from kind of what you've described, it feels like you were blessed in many ways to have a team that behaved in an agile way, and they did indeed embrace. But if I can ask you, maybe reflecting on past experiences as well, what have you found, maybe a couple of examples, when it was difficult, and what did you do about it to kind of change
Stressful situations is a natural one. When you have stakeholders breathing down your neck, you need to deliver this now, then you sort of the reptile brain comes out, and then it's like, you don't behave. And we've had those situations as well. It hasn't been a bump-free road, absolutely not, but you have to deal with them case by case.
Absolutely. As we close, unless we have any other questions, what I'd love to do is, I always like to ask my panelists one kind of key takeaway. We want to leave everyone empowered with something tangible that they can help on their maturity journey, their value creation journey. So, Prerna, I'd like to come to you first.
Sure. So I think for me it would be about having the openness and the mindset to embrace that visibility and data, and embrace AI and technology to enable your people to do more, and not look at AI being a replacement of your human capital. Yes. It's about how do you enable your people with the AI and the technology.
Absolutely. That augmentation, not replacement. Yeah. Wonderful. Daniel?
I would say take lead,
yep.
Be humble, and make sure that you get the right strategic partners to support your journey. Those three, definitely.
Thank you so much both for some great insights. Thanks a lot. Please, let's say thanks to our panelists. Wonderful.